It should build as a roadmap from that very first time you logged in until you get that first app in the App Store and you have that woohoo moment, which is always the coolest part to me. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Chris. Just a note before we do get started, though, if you have questions, Susan's always checking to make sure I'm on track here. So let me turn this up just a little bit. Is that better, Susan? I'm sure she'll let me know here in just a second. If you do have questions, there is a question box in your control panel. You can also chat, and there will be a couple of stopping points throughout tonight's meeting where Chris will be taking your questions. So raise your hand so we can make sure that we get those answered for you. At this point, I'll turn it over to Chris Robbins. Chris, take it away.
All right, how's it going? This is going to be a fun 90 minutes. It's going to be, I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to take for me to get through everything that I've set up here, but I'm going to start rolling through it. And I've got a couple of spaces set out for questions when they seem like it'd be a logical place to stop, so that I'm not asking for questions 89 minutes into the presentation on something I talked about on minute 2. So if you do have any questions, I'm still learning this interface too, so just go ahead and ask them, and I know Warren's going to help me stay on track with those. Give me a real quick, raise your hand type thing if you can see my screen, just so I make sure that you guys can see it. All right, cool. I see KB sees my screen. I'm looking out in this audience here, and it looks like a bunch of experienced people. Do I have the wrong audience for my for my App Building 101 session? In any case, I'm hoping that this becomes a presentation that gets recorded and ends up to be kind of the de facto what should I do first, if I'm trying to learn more about Buzztouch and how to do this. So like I said, this is App Building 101. I've got in parentheses there iOS. I'm hoping that for all the portions of this that don't relate to iOS, someone else kind of takes where I stop at Buzztouch and goes on through all the Eclipse stuff. I'm hoping someone picks that up so that we can have parallel content on both systems. 90 minutes would definitely not be enough for anyone to cover both of those. So I'm going to start off with what this webinar will cover. And this is just a bullet list here, and this PowerPoint is just here to kind of keep me on track of what I'm talking about. I'm going to be going back and forth between websites and Xcode and all kinds of things. So what this webinar is going to cover, first things to do at Buzztouch, like we said, from the first login, what should we do, what should we expect to see, how should we set up our account at Buzztouch. Next step there is creating the first project, then becoming an Apple developer, setting up Xcode, testing with the simulator, the always lovely iOS provisioning portal, adding an app to iTunes Connect, testing with the device, and then all the way the final step being submitting to Apple. So we're going to see if in the next 82 minutes I can get all that done and make it actually make sense too. So the next slide I have here goes over things that this will not cover, either because it's outside the scope of this discussion or if there's just not enough time. So app design, obviously we've got other presentations on that. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be setting up just a very basic app, 2 screens, and just showing the steps needed to get that all the way through. Obviously, I'm not going to submit that to Apple. An in-depth look at the control panel. We're gonna get in and do the things that we need to do to get the app done and downloaded. It's not going to be, we're not going to look at every single plugin and all the options. That's, again, outside the time frame. Self-hosting will be covered hopefully in another lecture. App troubleshooting, I think, was already covered a little bit. Avoiding rejections, that's a subject that would take far too long. And then, of course, Android compiling and submitting. Like I said, I hope someone picks up that ball and runs with it, because I am not the person for that. All right, so we're going to start off with the first things to do at Buzztouch.com. And what I've got here, of course, a screenshot of their lovely homepage. And what we're going to do is this is the steps that I would say, and I went ahead and went through all this again just recently, set up another dummy account that I'm going to step you through with, because it's been close to 2 years since I first signed up at Buzztouch.com. So I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was actually relevant and current. So we're going to sign up for a new account. It's going to make us confirm email addresses. I've already done that, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to explore the control panel to include setting up the public profile, setting up the developer profile, and setting up the email settings. We're going to visit the forum and introduce yourself. That's I asked David if he could set up the introduce yourself form so that everybody that's new can kind of step in, say hello, mention why they're there, what they're looking to do, and that always helps out, in a community that we've already got that's, one of the best communities I've ever dealt with. That's just hopefully this will help bring the new people in and make them feel like they're part of our community right away. I've got there next is take the Buzztouch learning path, and then visit the how-to. So let's start off at the website and see what it takes to get started. So this big button here, of course, getting started, is going to step you through setting up an account. And there's David Book. So we've got just a couple things to fill in here, and like I said, I've already done it. I'm going to log in with my dummy account here in a second. But you set up your first name, last name, email address, password, where you're at, and thanks, Dave, for that new map screen. That was pretty neat this morning. And then agree to the terms of service, submit, and from that you'll get an email confirming your email address. After that, you're ready to log in. So that's where I'm going to get started at. Everybody knows how to set up an account. We're going to get right into the login part so we can look at the control panel. So everybody look at my strong 6-dot password there. Hope you all captured it real quick. So this is my alter ego here. This is my dummy account that I just set up with a big whopping 0 posts. We're going to explore this control panel real quick. So let me go back to my cheat sheet here to see. So we've signed up, we've confirmed the email address. Now we're ready to start looking at the settings in the control panel. And this is all important because you want to set this up so that when you do go to make your first app and you run into your first problem and you go into the forums to ask a question, at least people will have a little background because of your public profile and your developer profile. They can kind of see where you're at, where you're starting from. They can see that you've taken the time to set all that up, and they can, the people who are always more than willing to help, will, and in essence, take you more seriously, that you're not coming in with post number 1 asking a silly question that shouldn't be asked. They'll be more willing to help, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience here, of course. If I see somebody, with one post that's asking a question that could have been answered if they took, 3 seconds to learn, then, I might skip that person. But if I see that they set up their profile, they've gone through the learning path and stuff like that, then yes, I'm going to take the time to answer their questions. So let's look real quick, just a brief overview of the different profiles and the email settings. So this is, of course, the control panel, which can always be reached by clicking on your account up here. And this, of course, is all followed in the Buzztouch learning path also. And then here's your settings over here for the account. So I said the first one we're going to look at is a public profile. In the public profile, we've got the screen name, an appropriate little tagline, an avatar, a little welcome message, your location, which if you put in the Latin long, will show up on the new map that David just made for us today, and then the visibility options. So that's a very easy one to set up. We're going to go from there to developer profile, which is more a sense of if you decide to show this, people can see the more professional side of what you're doing with your business or hobby. So it's got places for, again, all the website URLs for Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the different ways to get a hold of you, email addresses, PayPal email address if you're going to be a plugin developer, another quick description of what you're doing, either with yourself or your company, any skills and technologies. You can see that my alter ego has no skills or experience. And hourly rate, I've never dealt with that one, but we may get to the point where people are asking for help and stuff like that. So, okay, I see a question there. So we've gone over the public profile, the developer profile real quick. Let me just look at email settings just to show you that there is one that is defaulted off. And of course, we don't want to opt out of all emails. That wouldn't be good. But send me an email when I receive a private message. I think this one is opted off to begin with. So you want to certainly accept that so that when somebody sends you an email or sends you a private message within the Buzztouch control panel, that you can actually be notified an email. And then there's one other place. I forget if that was account settings. There's one other place, and David, if you want to text it real quick, that you set that you're even allowed to receive messages. I forget where that was, but that's an important one to receive also. Public profile bottom. Okay, let's look at that again. Okay, there it is. Allow private message from other users. If you do not select that, then the first time that someone tries to message you, it's going to not allow them to. So that's an important one to allow also. Also, this is a handy drop down here in the visibility options of what you want people to see when they look at your public profile. I usually default mine to publish apps so that everybody can gawk at all my amazing apps that I've made and be overwhelmed by my greatness. Or you could set it to profile, developer profile. David likes that. All right, so let's go back to my cheat sheet. I haven't lost anybody yet, have I?
I don't hear any snoring on the in the chat window, so I think you're okay, Chris.
I've had a long day, so if I start to snore, you need to wake me up.
The list is growing. They're coming in off the streets.
Great, that's good. Okay, so we've explored the account profile, set up our profiles and email settings. So let's visit the form here real quick. This is where I spend most of my day. And there's my picture right there. All right, so in the forms, we've got the newest topics here. We've got the list of the different forms and categories over here. And then here is the new introduce yourself. So what I suggest for every new user to do, since this is just set up, you'll only see, looks like 9 topics in there, is go in there first thing, introduce yourself, say where you're from, say what you're looking to do, give some background information about yourself, experience or no experience, and then you will certainly be welcomed by a ton of people. You can see that all of these have several replies. Those are obviously all people saying, hello, welcome, and all that good stuff. So very important to do that. From there, one of the biggest questions that we always get, that I see, is why can't we search the form? Well, you can. It's right here. It's listed advanced search. So right here, the topic title contains, that's what you want to click in, type in your search, and if I search for search, then maybe I'll see all the people that have asked, hey, why can't I search the forms? And there they are. Is there a search function for this form? So this is, maybe it needs to be a different color, maybe it needs to be bigger, maybe you just need to be reminded one time where it's at and you never forget. But that's also important. So spend some time in the forms. Please search first. If you're new to this also, one of the tricks that people will use is to use Google to search the forms, and they will do a Google site search using the domain name and then the search topic, and then it will search through all the posts, not just the post titles, but the post content also. So please use that. You will find a lot more answers that way. If sometimes someone will ask like a general question here, and maybe that general question gets answered and it has the exact answer you're looking for, but because the title wasn't perfect, you will never find it with just a regular title search. And David is saying that he promises he's going to make the search better, and that was private. So
No, really the point is we're not searching the content of the long thread, right? We're only searching the titles of the forums, and that is problematic. It was a little naive of us in the beginning to set it up that way, but that is still how it's set up. So the Google trick's a great one.
Yep, that works like a champ.
In fact, we could probably put a Google search box right on this screen right here that would do that. That would format the search form for us. I never looked at it that way.
Then you're using Google's massive servers to search instead of your own, right?
As long as they'll keep us on, as long as they give us the results. I mean, that would be the idea. But anyway,
all right. Nope. You can interrupt anytime you want.
Okay.
So we've visited the forum, we've introduced ourselves. Now we're going to take the Buzztouch learning path. And it says here 32 minutes total. That is more than worth the investment, because I guarantee your first 10 questions that you would normally ask in the forums will be answered in there. Even if you don't take the time yet to do the iOS or the Android tutorials, do the Buzztouch one, because it shows you all the things that I'm showing right now, all the control panel parts, but just in a lot more in-depth detail. And you get quizzed on it, so you can actually find out if you're learning it or not. So that's always in your main account menu under the learning path. And this Buzztouch 101 will bring you right to all the different learning paths that are available. And then here it is, the 5 different topics, 31 or 32 minutes worth of content, a definite must-watch. All right, and then visit the how-tos. Get your first star. So the stars that you see on people's profiles back in the forums, you will see on any given person a number of stars telling you how many learning paths they have learned or have taken and completed, the number of points they have based upon the number of posts that they've done, and the number of points that they received for their training. And slacker. That's right, I'm a 2-star slacker. And so you'll get your first star, and like I said, that'll also help give you, if you're a new person, some credibility when you're asking questions.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to interrupt while you click around there. I'm at like Warren said, I'm at a top secret location in Northern California tonight. And man, is the internet clean and fast right here. It sounds perfect.
That's good. I think mine's having some hiccups, but hopefully everybody can hear me just fine.
No, this sounds great. It sounds like I'm sitting right next to you.
All right, so the last thing we're going to do here at Buzztouchcom, at least the website itself, before we get into making our first app, is the how-tos. And this is another must visit. Even if you don't ingest all the information on it from the get-go, at least know that it's here, know what kind of topics are covered, and that will be a starting point for any time that you have a question. David's got it separated into self-hosting, non-specific iOS and Android tutorials, and then specific to iOS and Android. And there's all kinds of information in there put together both by David and his team and by the users of the product themselves. So this list is always growing. I can remember when it was just a few documents large, and now it's very impressive. It's got a couple website addresses here for different support sites that deal with Buzztouch related content, and then the meetup groups that leads you to the forums for the meetups. So read over some of the stuff, look for it first if you think you have a question, because a lot of times you'll ask a question, someone will refer you right to a PDF that lives and this how-to section. All right, so let's go back to my cheat sheet. We are done with that part. We're going to create our first project. Like I said, it's going to be a very simple one. Upload an app icon, check out the core properties, and create some screens. So let's go back to the website. After we get done with this, I'm going to open up for questions. So I'm going to go back to my account menu. All of the applications live in the application menu. And you can see I've started one here called App Making 101. And I've not uploaded an icon for it yet. But so you would normally make a new app by creating it here, and I'll show you what that looks like. You give it a name, you promise that you're not breaking any laws, and then you hit submit, and that's going to do exactly what showed up on this one that I've already created here. So we're going to look first at app icon, because we need to set this up first before we can download our source code. So I'm going to browse through and find just something generic. Let's go into one of my existing apps. Where is it? There it is. Let's go with that one. And we'll upload a pretty icon to it. And when you do this, it's not only going to get it's not only going to give you an icon for your control panel, it's also going to set up the different size icons for your app when you download your actual source code. So we've given it that, it's happy now. We're going to look at the core properties real quick. Application name we've already set up. Application ID, that's information that you need that kind of lives in the config data. Don't normally have to interact with that too much. Project name, the difference between the application name and the product name, this is kind of the application name is for housekeeping in your control panel. The project name is going to be the one that's going to end up to be the project name in your compiler, either Xcode or Eclipse. All these URLs are going to be kind of more advanced. We're not going to worry about that just yet. And just basic things like allow the rotation, the location, and tracking TPS. This is kind of stuff that you want to look at first, but then you want to also confirm just before your final compiler also. So we've looked at the core properties. Let's look at the layout. Actually, the layout we want to look at after the themes. No, I'm sorry, after the screens. So let's look at the screens real quick. So we're going to start off with just a home screen, which is just a simple menu. And from that, I'm just going to go in and add 2 subscreens for it. I'm going to add a PDF file. And tell it what it is. And I'm going to add, let's say, a URL or website. So we've got one simple menu with 2 menu items. When we go back to look at our screens, we'll see them all here. I'm just going to go in real quick and set some properties for it. So the file name, I think I called it, what was this? Appbuilding 101. And save. And then I'm just going to change this real quick to Buzztouch. Oh, sorry about that.
Top secret.
Top secret. Never divulge your API information. It's in bold letters somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, so we've set up the 2 screens, the 2 subscreens. Nothing's going to look impressive at all, but it's all going to be functional. The reason that we skip the layout first is because the layout is going to rely on what screens you have. So you've got a non-tab layout, which is what we're going to save. We're going to save it. We're going to keep it as a non-tab layout. But if you wanted the tab layout, then you'd set it here. You'd delete this out. You would select your screens that you wanted for your tabs. That's why you want to actually create the screens first, or else you won't be able to select them. Put in 1 through 5 tabs, and then hit save. So we're going to keep this as non-tabbed. So we've got everything that we need now to actually download our source code. Let me make sure, look at my cheat sheet to make sure we're still on course. So we've created the project, we've completed all this right here. So let me see what's next. So I'm actually, before we download, going to open up the floor to any questions real quick on the things that we've covered. Warren, do we have any questions?
Well, on your question panel, do you see the questions that have been coming in?
I see 0 questions.
You see 0 questions. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I have a questions panel also, but there's nothing in it.
I have a question.
Maybe Warren, maybe you're looking at questions and then you're the only one who can see them.
Apparently so. So
I have a question myself.
Okay, you go ahead, and then after that
is
go ahead.
For you, Stobe, and also for really for anybody. And I suppose you can raise your hand or type or whatever. I have 2 questions really. One's related to this application icon, and what I'm curious to know is do you guys generally upload the icon and then continue using that icon after you download the source code, or do you replace it all once you get your project open? In other words, it comes with 2 or 3 icons, the right size for you, and if people are throwing those away and replacing them after the fact, that's fine. I'm just curious how that works, because I noticed that some of the icons that I upload, and I've been doing this for a long time now, and obviously I've made and built tons of these apps, it seems like I'm losing some quality. And so I've replaced a couple of them in the past after I've downloaded the project, and I wondered if anybody else was experiencing that.
I would say in the past I have kept them in there, and I do believe that they are lower resolution than possibly they should be. Of course, when you go to upload your icon at iTunes Connect, it's got to be absolutely huge, and they use that for all their internal stuff. But for the app package itself and what ends up being deployed on the screen, I'm not sure if we're even packaging up Retina icons in the
you're doing the Retina size. Yeah. See, what ends up happening is the idea is the biggest size that comes in your project is the size that you cropped it to, and then shrinking it down from 114 to 72 to 57 or whatever the sizes are. In theory, you shouldn't lose that quality, but it still seems like you may be. But anyway, it might be something that we can revisit another time.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
On that note, there are several free applications in the Mac App Store that if you give them your biggest size, they create them all for you, and those are very easy to drag into Xcode as well.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's cool.
All right. Next questions?
I'm going to allow Susan Matoxin to ask a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Hi everyone. I have kind of a different setup. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Going back to the icon sizes, isn't it just 72 pixels that we upload into Buzztouch? So that's why I always reload my own icons in, because there's the new iPad icon is it's 57, 72, and then I can't remember all the numbers, but there's 4 different sizes, but they're quite a bit bigger than 72.
That might have answered my question right there. Actually, I'm looking right now. We made the changes when, a few months ago. Oh, yeah, I still see here on my screen this is 72 by 72. That makes perfect sense then, because if you open up your project when you download your Xcode project, you'll notice that there is an icon now that ships with your project from your control panel that is larger than 72 by 72. So that makes perfect sense, because if we're shrinking it down to 72 and then bringing it back up to, you're cropping it to 72 in the using the web-based little cropper there. Well, if you crop it to 72 like we're asking you to, it's 72, 57, 114, and 144. That makes perfect sense then. So we're making that 144 version out of the one that you crop, so that's why we're losing the quality.
Oh, okay, and Apple will reject if you don't have a good enough icon now too. I'm sure they will.
Well, they're looking. They used to just look for the size, and now they're starting to look at the quality too, or whatever. But I guess my point is on the crop screen, we should be asking you, instead of 72 by 72, we should be asking you to crop it at 144.
Yeah,
so that when you go down in size, you won't lose quality. Basically, we just discovered what I was worried about.
But if we put a bigger one in, would it says 72 by 72 there, but if we were to put a 144 icon in there and just drag it to fit the whole thing, would all the pixels make it in?
Yeah, if you crop it to 144, the back end, the download packaging program is not cropping anything. It's taking the 144, and now it's 72, but I'm saying it should be 144. It's taking the square that you cropped.
Okay.
And then it's proportionately scaling it down, so it's not cutting it. Another way to say it is it's pushing the pixels closer together, right? I mean, it's not, but that's one way to look at it. You're not going to lose quality when you get smaller.
If we could fix it, that would save everyone one hassle, make it easier for a new
people.
Yeah,
that's why I asked. That makes perfect sense. So the error on my part was I was operating the assumption, I'm looking at it right now. In fact, Stobe, if you can go back to the icon upload screen.
Yep.
You'll see right above there, it'll say, crop the image to 72 by 72. And then when you uploaded the icon, it gave you that little 72 pixel by 72 pixel box, and it constrained you to that size. What I'm saying is that should be 144.
Right. And now I always use, when I first make my icons, I make them 1024 by 1024 because I know that's what I'm going to need for the App Store.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So that's what I upload. Are you saying when I upload that, your system is taking it down to 72 first?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. See, what ends up happening is you crop it to 72 by 72 using the panel here. And at that moment, you're not losing any quality. It's a great looking 72 pixel icon, looks great. But when you download the source code, that's when we recreate all of the various sizes. And so we make a 72. We don't have to make a 72. We already have one. We make a 57, we make a 114, and we make a 144. Well, for those two sizes that need to be larger, well, that's where we're losing the quality because we're taking that 72 and stretching it out.
Well, I just had to look at the panel list to see who's attending this to make sure my clients weren't in here.
Anyway, so that helped me a ton. So the answer to that technical thing from my perspective is this screen that we're looking at right now should be asking you to choose and crop it to 144, not 72.
There you go, something else for your to-do list. Go put that on your whiteboard right now.
There you go. And to answer your question, Susan, the reason we don't want you to just upload the quote-unquote the perfect size is because not everybody even understands like how to use an image editor by the time when they get to this screen. And so,
oh yeah, that's true.
Photoshop and all the different tools, I mean, naturally they're going to need to by the time they make something of high quality, but there's a large number of people who aren't even sure what that means yet.
Yeah, well, it's really true. It's a barrier. It creates a barrier.
Right. Exactly.
All right, well, I'm going to push on then, just
cool.
for the sake of time. My next screen here says becoming an Apple developer. So we're going to have to set up some things at Apple first before we can get any further with our project. Let me just make sure. Yep, okay. So it says here, the list here says to sign up at developer.apple.com. At that website, it's going to give you several options. I'm going to visit that just in a minute. Several options. It's going to require an Apple ID, and when you do this, when you sign in, it's going to give you an option of using your existing Apple ID or creating a new one. There's reasons for both. I'm not going to get into that just right now, but do research that a little bit to make sure that you know what you're doing. And then to become an Apple developer, it's free to get into their system, but to become an iOS developer, it's $99 a year. So what I would suggest on that, no one likes to pay dues per year, but we all have the assumption that we're going to make that back fairly quickly. My suggestion to that is I've seen the gambit of people logging into Buzztouch and getting an app submitted to Apple within 3 days, and I've seen it where they keep on working on it for, let's say, 6 months before they actually upload it. if you're in this boat here, I would wait until a couple days out before you actually sign on for the $99, and then you're not wasting months and months. That's not something that you need to do right away, and I'll get into the reasons why you even need to do that when we get to that step. So let's look at that site real quick. I'm not going to go too far into it, but this is the Apple developer site, and it's going to give you the 3 options of Mac, Safari, or iOS development. And then the one that we're going to use for this lecture is iOS development. And when you do this and you create your account and register, that's when you're going to use an Apple ID. It's going to give you access to this website. There is a ton of information in this library of different tips and stuff. Way too much stuff to read, but all worthwhile reading. You'll find a lot of answers there for Apple-specific and iPhone-specific stuff, not so much Buzztouch related. So you're going to sign up for that and get your iOS development, and that's going to at least get you further into this website. And there is, let me see what my next points were here. Become an Apple. Okay, so we're going to get past that now and get all the way into Xcode, setting up Xcode. So Xcode now is free. It used to be that you need to be an iOS developer to download it. Then it went to being in the App Store, but you need to pay for it. Now it's just completely free. When you download the Xcode, it includes the SDK, at least the current one, for whenever you download it, and it's available in the Mac App Store. So with that in mind, you have to obviously have the Mac App Store. You need to have a Macintosh computer. You need to have a Intel Macintosh computer, and more specifically, when we get into the newest version of Xcode, you need to have OS X 10.7, which is Lion. It won't let you download the latest version of Xcode without having Lion. The requirements for Lion, you have to have an Intel Core 2 Duo version of your computer, whether it's a MacBook or an iMac or a Mac Mini. You have to have at least 2 gigabytes of RAM and 7 gigabytes of hard drive space. There are older versions. There is a version of Xcode that you can still download for Snow Leopard, and that's available in the iOS Dev Center. So you have to actually log in and get to those downloads, and it's buried pretty deep in there. It used to be pretty easy to get to. The link to find the older versions is still fairly easy to find, but once you get in there, you have to dig past a lot of older versions for Lion before you can even get to the version for Snow Leopard. If you're at this point, though, I would suggest, if you're just starting, to go ahead and start with the current version of Xcode, whatever that is. Okay, so we're at the point now that we've got Xcode downloaded. I'm not going to show you how to actually download it. The Mac App Store has made that extremely easy. You just have to wait an hour or so because it's a huge download. So we're ready to actually test our app in the simulator. So right now, up to this point, we have to be an app developer, and we have to be, an Apple developer, and we have to have Xcode, but we don't necessarily have to have the iOS $99 per year thing yet, because we're just going to test in the simulator. The only time we need to actually get into that development license is when we want to test on a device or actually develop it for the distribution in the App Store where you're going to go sell it. So right now we're still just going to, it's all still free. Everything is free up to this point. Free with the sense that you've already bought a Mac from them, so it's not always free. But it's free at this point to download Xcode, log into Buzztouch, create your app, download it, compile it, and test it out in the simulator. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to our Buzztouch control panel and prepare and download the product. We're going to open it up in Xcode. We're going to do this right here, follow the instructions PDF. That will save you a lot of heartache and a lot of questions in the forum. And then we're going to copy in some supporting files, whatever those may be, images, videos, PDFs, and then we're gonna get ready to run it. So let's go through all those steps. We're going to go back to Buzztouch first, and go back to my main menu for this app. I'm going to download the source code here. When I click on that, it's going to ask me which source code I want, Android or iOS. So I'm going to prepare that. once we get the package prepared, it's going to give us a download link. And I've got my download. Now what I suggest, and this is kind of just the way I do it, is I make an app folder, and inside that app folder I make a subfolder with the name of the app that I'm working on. So you can see I've got my apps folder. I've got the name of the app I'm working on, and I'm just going to take that download right there, this folder that just downloaded. It downloaded the zip file, and since I'm using Safari, it actually unzipped it for me. I'm going to drag that whole folder into the subfolder. And what I do is anytime I make my graphics or any of my supporting files, I'm going to put those all in this folder here. And I'm going to have my project folder here, which is my actually Xcode project. And then everything's going to stay somewhat organized. If you want to look at how organized I am with all my other ones, and this is something I have to meticulously do because I'm not an organized person by nature. You can see, let's say in that 50 states, that I've got all of my artwork that I've done, all of the supporting pictures and documents and stuff, and then you can see I've got my actual project folders in there. So I've got now in my App Making 101 subfolder, this is the source code that I just downloaded from Buzztouch. And I'm going to do the first thing here is read my instructions. And this is a nice, easy to use, easy to follow document that shows me exactly what I'm going to do. But the most important thing that we're going to do is this part right here, step 2, is drag the project folders into Xcode. So once we launch the actual application, the Xcode project file in Xcode, we're going to drag these 5 folders in, and then from there it's going to know what it needs to compile. So you can see that it's got plenty of options in here, all the way from downloading all the way to running your first time. So let me get rid of that, and we are ready to open up this project in Xcode, which is the Xcode project file. Now, for the sake of this lecture, I am using an older version of Xcode, so it may not look exactly like what you've got, but most of the stuff is going to be the same. So it's going to index my files, which is going to be nice and quick since there's not much of it yet. I've got my project over here. I'm going to expand that to see that I do have some of the folders, but I don't have all the folders. If I was to run this app right now, I would get a nice pretty white screen because there's no plugins in here. And if you do a search in the Buzztouch forums for white screen, you'll see many people have asked, why do I have 100 pages in my app, but when I run it, I get just one blank screen. So I'm going to go back to my Finder where I've got all of these 5 folders here, and the way I remember it is that I leave out the ACCL and I highlight all the other ones. So the video, sound, plugins, images, docs, I'm going to take all those, drag them in here, tell it that I want to copy that into there, so it's not linking to it. That's kind of your own choice, and then create the groups for any added folders. Hit finish, and then they're going to be in there. So now the plugins folder, that's the important one. You can see all the plugins that I had the option of actually creating, and as you get more and more into this development and you purchase some of the plugins from the plugin market, then you'll see that those will become downloaded into your projects as well. So I've got everything I need now in here to run. I'm going to select the iPhone simulator from my scheme menu here, and you can see it. I'm another slacking again on which SDK I'm using, but it's working for me right now. And I'm going to run this first project here, and I'm going to tell you that I did forget one step. It was on my to-do list, but I'm going to go ahead and let it run so I can show you the error of my ways. I'm expecting to see a simple menu list with 2 menu items. The website should work just fine because that's coming from the information that I programmed in the control panel. And the PDF file is going to fail on me. Like I said, I knew exactly what I did, in my list here I had copy in your supporting files, and I forgot to do that. So let's do that real quick. I had this PDF file. I'm just going to drag that into, let's say, the documents folder. Tell it again that I want to copy it in there. I like to do that so I get a separate copy into the actual build folder. And anytime you do that, anytime you make any changes to your binary by dragging stuff into it, you always need to rerun it again. You can't just simply go to your simulator and refresh it because the files haven't been loaded. And when I do click this run, you'll see that it's going to say real quick that it's copying some sort of an asset on there. Resource, it says. So it added that one resource on there. And now when I look, let me refresh. I might have named it wrong. App making 101.pdf. Let me look real quick. Oops, that wasn't it. They always say if you're going to make a mistake, it's going to be in front of a live audience, so I'm okay with that. Oh, Appbuilding.
I thought you did that on purpose so that we could all be like impressed with your debugging skills.
Well, now that you mention that.
And of course, you could also open up the console, but of course, we get all nerded out, right?
Either way, I did impress you with my troubleshooting, didn't I?
I was impressed. I was impressed.
All right, so because I changed that, I didn't need to actually recompile it, but because I did change that, it's going to say my content has changed. It's going to re-download that configuration file. And hopefully this time it knows what's there. So there it is. There's my PDF. Now this is my Spaceballs moment where we're looking at the presentation inside the presentation inside the presentation.
That's called recursive presentation.
So I did get my little nerd out moment there for anybody that's
awesome.
that enjoys Mel Brooks movies.
That is awesome.
All right. So if I'm not an entertainer, I'm nothing, right? So we've done this. We've tested the app in the simulator. We've got a working app now, as really unimpressive as the one that we built, but it works. If you did the same thing and went back to Buzztouch and added 500 screens and compiled them all up, then you would have your 500 screen app completely working up to this point, all for free. So what's next on our list here? Questions. Let me open up again to questions since we've gone through the Xcode to downloading and compiling to the simulator. If you have any questions relevant up to that point, go ahead and let me know now.
Okay, Chris, I've got a couple of people that have asked questions here, and
okay.
Let's start. Susan's got her hand up, so Susan, we'll start with you, and then Mark Anderson, you'll follow. Okay?
Great.
Susan? I think we lost Susan there for a minute.
Oh, Sam here. I don't have a question at this point. I thought my hand was down.
Oh, no, your hand is up. Okay, well.
Oh, sorry. So okay, sorry about that.
Is it getting tired? Your hand getting tired?
Yeah.
I'll put that down.
Had it backwards. Sorry about that.
Okay. Mark Anderson. Mark, Go Northwest is out there, and he asked to be able to ask a question, but I don't know what his question is. So, Mark, go ahead.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're a little broken, but we can hear you.
Okay, because I'm calling from a very, very far away, from the Mediterranean. So, in fact, my question was before when David was talking about the icons, about 72 and 72 dpi, what we needed to do. But okay, I understood the answer then. So for the moment, I'm easily listening. But one of the things that I did think about is having the 72, or at least having an icon that you have to put into your app at the start is a good thing. Even if it's not in a good resolution, we don't care about it because we can take care about it afterwards by doing the artwork and all that kind of stuff. but it was an old question. It's a question which takes about 20 minutes ago. So,
Okay.
so I'm following. I don't know if you guys can actually hear me or not, because it's my very first webinar, and and that was it. It was a question which was about 20 minutes ago, but up to now I'm following fine.
Okay, and let me expand real quick on another icon tip. What I'll generally do when I've got a new project to work on, I'll be so excited about that new project that I don't want to go into Photoshop and do all my icon stuff. So I'll regurgitate one of my old ones, upload it to Buzztouch, and just give it that satisfaction that it needs to let me download. Later on, I will actually create the icon. I'll go back into that same icon upload, do it one more time, and I'll just recompile that project at that point and get a fresh download. And when I do that, you don't even have to take that fresh download and use that project. You can take the files that it creates for you and overwrite your existing files in Xcode from that. So if I look at, let's say, again, that 50 states one, you can see that I had 2 project folders here. And what I may have done is on the second one, it might have been my second download that I did, where I just went in and got the icons out and replaced the icons that I originally downloaded, which may have been either an older version of my original icon or may have been just a placeholder at that point. So that's something you can always do, is get something in place now, do all your work. When you get to the time to make an actual icon, then you can go back and let Buzztouch do the hard work of resizing it and download it and then put it back in your new project. But good question.
I may be totally throwing you off here, Chris, but I think in 2.0 now, in the new control panels that everybody's using, I don't think you have to upload an icon to download the package.
I thought I did today when I
that's
tested.
fine.
I could be wrong.
I'm just trying to jump around, and a lot of the different things you guys probably may or may not be able to relate to this. It's funny because from my perspective, there's lots of ways that the control panel works that are different than your perspective, because I'm, administering the thing. So
right.
There's a lot of different features, but I thought that we removed, when we did that whole icon, when we revisited that whole icon with the new size, I thought we removed the requirement to upload. But no, it's not important. But you might try that next time. Just make an app and see if you can download it.
Okay.
No big deal.
Hey, Chris, I've got a couple more people with their hands up.
Okay.
So, Sean McMean, if you'd like to jump in and ask your question.
All right, great. Thanks. Thank you guys for doing this. I joined a little late, so I'm not sure if you talked about this in the beginning or not. But I was wondering if you're going to talk about some of the specific screens. Primarily, the one I'm looking to find out more information on is the HTML screen, because I'm trying to use some jQuery in it, and it's referencing JavaScript files and CSS, and I've done lots of searches in the forums, and I know there's some things that are difficult to get linking up with that. So I didn't want to jump ahead if that's what you're going to address stuff like that later or not. But
it's actually something that I'm not going to cover, but just because of time, I said in the beginning that we couldn't go through all the different plugins. But let me just give you one real hint real quick. Are you talking about Xcode or Android? Okay.
Xcode.
Let me show you something real quick, because this might be exactly what you're having a problem with. Anytime that you put a Java file into a project and try to compile it, it's not going to like it because it's going to try to recompile it. So what you're going to do is when you click on this main target up here and go into over here your build phases, you've got 4 things here. One is a copy bundle resource and one is a compile source. Now I'm not going to have anything in my project right now that has Java files, but JavaScript files. But what you would do is when you looked in this list, anytime you drag a .js file in, it's usually going to be down here at the bottom. And if you see it down there, you don't want it in there. So you're going to grab it. Let's pretend that was it. You're going to grab it and you're going to drag it up all the way up to this copy bundle resource and just drop it there. And that's going to at least solve one error that you get when you're compiling about trying to recompile a JavaScript. I learned that the hard way several times, and it always bites me every time I do it. So hopefully that says, hopefully that was part of your problem. If not, then I do suggest going into the forums and asking that, because I'm not going to get any further in this
Okay.
lecture on that.
Yeah, you said that good. The trick that I use, just to add one thing, is when you're on that screen, the app settings, and there's a little search box right there, and if you just typed .js in that search box, it will show you all of the JavaScript files that Chris just talked about.
Yep.
Okay.
And those are the ones that you're going to move. It's really handy because it just groups them all together, and you can just drag them up. Like, I usually expand the, compile sources section, which is where I want to find them in. Type JS, it shows me the JS files, and I just drag them up to bundle. And just like Chris said, and that's probably, I know that jQuery is in lots and lots and lots of these apps, so it's not jQuery itself.
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah.
Do you want me to hear there?
Yeah, go on.
Well, I think you can hear him unmuted there in the background. Keith McIver, or Mac Apple,
Okay.
in the forums, has got his hand up, and he'd like to ask a question.
All right, Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to comment on two things very quickly. I think you do still have to add an icon before you down the source code.
Okay.
When I did that last week,
Okay, good.
that wouldn't let me download it. You still do have to add an icon. And just to touch on what you were saying, Chris, when you start building a new app, it's kind of, obviously it's exciting, and I've always, in iTunes Connect, when I put together a new app, I always upload previous screenshots and app icons, so I never do it's probably bad practice, but I never go in and do all of the app icons and the different scales and the screenshots. It's always previously used images that I've used, but you do still have to add an icon before you can drop the source code onto your desktop.
Yep, I do the same thing. I'll get placeholders in all over the place, and then just as long as you remember to replace them before you actually submit, everything's good.
Yeah, it could get sticky.
All right, very good. Any other questions?
I've got one more here. It's from the question panelist from Greg out there. He asks, what screens do not work in the simulator for iOS? I don't know if that's the appropriate question to ask here or not, but if you could address that.
I would say anything that needs the phone ability. That's just the general answer. David probably answered better, but that's probably outside the scope of this content anyways.
Yeah, I would say that I can't think of any of the plugins that don't work in the simulator. The simulator in iOS is like 10 to 1 times more. The Android simulators aren't exact duplicates of the phones I found, right? They're close. The iOS simulator, when you launch an iPad 2 simulator or an iPhone 6 simulator, iPhone 5 simulator, I mean, it's just like the device. They've done an amazing job at replicating that. So all your screens are going to work. You're not going to have two things we run into. The phone, of course, won't dial. You can't take pictures. So if you're using like an image uploader screen or something, you're not going to be able to take a photo. But you can choose from the photo library. You can add photos to it and things like that. But yeah, that's
anything that needs one of the non-standard programs like iTunes. If you have a link that goes into iTunes, it's not going to let you do that.
Launching other apps and stuff. But I think Greg's going to be surprised. I think Greg's mostly Android at this point. I'm not sure, and moving into iOS, and I think he's going to be happy when he lands there. Of course, he'll probably correct me there and tell me I've been iOS for years. I'm making some assumptions.
Actually, Greg's response was, "Yep."
Okay.
So he's right there with you.
Got it.
Just a note to you, Chris. We are an hour in, and you have about a half an hour left of your scheduled time.
Okay. So I think we're doing pretty good. So up to this point, we've logged into, for anybody that joined in late, up to this point, let me just do a fast forward here of what we've done. We talked about what we're going to cover, what we're not going to cover. We logged into Buzztouch. We set up an account. We set up the profile, visited the forums, and we took the Buzztouch learning path. Learned everything there was about Buzztouch. Started in, created a very, very basic project. Then we went to set up Apple developer account, and we downloaded Xcode, and then we downloaded our first project and ran it in the simulator. So that's a fast forward of what we've done so far, and now we're ready to continue on. So the iOS provisioning portal, what that is for is you're going to need to do several steps in the provisioning portal to set up all the different certificates for your computer that tells your computer that you're a developer, that you're allowed to compile these things, that you're allowed to code sign your projects for either putting them on a device or putting them into the App Store. And so far we haven't had to do that yet because we haven't put anything on a device yet. We've only run it in the simulator. So in the provisioning portal, before we can even go into iTunes Connect, that's why I put this before iTunes Connect. iTunes Connect, to create our first app in their system, we need to actually have an app ID or a bundle ID. And I will tell you up front, I'm not an expert on what all of this stuff means, but I do have success every time I go back into Apple. So I've put together the steps that I do. So to create a new app ID, you'll need a description, a bundle seed ID, and a bundle identifier, and they use the reverse domain name type structure where it's the com.domainname.appname. Now this might seem a little strange what all this stuff is, but when you step through the steps, and I'll go to the website here in a second, it actually does make pretty much sense. So we have to create a bundle ID, and what that is, that's basically just us telling Apple that we've got an app that we're going to eventually put somewhere, and we're just kind of saving the name for it. And we're going to need to know this stuff to put it back into Xcode also. We'll also set up devices in there. We are allowed to add up to 100 devices for in our developers account, and that would be physical devices, whether it's your own iPhone, iPad, or if you're doing this for a client, you can add your client's device in there also, so that you can actually deploy it before you deploy it in the App Store. You can deploy it on their device, and I always recommend doing this if you're developing for a client. Compile it onto their device, let them go home with it for a weekend, let them go through every single screen and every option, and then when they say it's good to go, if something messes up, it's their fault, not yours. That's just a business tip right there. Cover your butt, right? So to do that, you can either add your device through the provisioning portal, where you need to give it a device ID, or you can add it through the Xcode organizer. And let me look at that real quick. One of the windows of Xcode is the organizer, where it has all of your builds and all of your devices, all of your archives. If I go to devices, you're probably going to regurgitate. You're about to throw up, aren't you? Look at that. Holy cow. Chris has some devices. So you would go into any one of these devices and you right-click on it, and you're going to say add to provisioning portal. And I think in some places it says use for development at some point, but add to provisioning portal. As long as your Xcode knows who you are, and we haven't done that yet, as long as your Xcode knows who you are and how to log in, then it's going to set that up for you. And the last thing here, provisioning profiles, 2 different types, and we'll go through that real quick before I visit the website. The development profile, which is what you need anytime that you want to compile a device or a application that you're working on for in-house testing on your device. And then the distribution, which is what you're going to use when you actually go and submit to an app store. So in my case, I'm a developer who also develops apps for myself, so I would use a development profile when I'm actually creating the app and testing the app, and then I would use my distribution profile when I submit it to the App Store, and I want it to, if it sells, I want to get paid for it. At the same time, I'm also a developer for clients, so I use my developer's account for all of my device testing and development, and then the last step I would do is use my my client's distribution profile, which I've downloaded because I set up her account at Apple for her, and I would use that, which I've drug into my Xcode, to submit, so that when I submit one of her applications, it ends up in her iTunes Connect, and she gets paid for it. All right, so let's look at the website real quick. I'm going to log in. Nobody's got a keylogger running, do they? Let me see if I remember this. All right. So now I am in my iOS Developer Center, which I can get into because I am a paying member, a $99 per year member. And we're going to look right now at the iOS provisioning portal. When we go in there, we can see all the things that I talked about. The device list, where you can actually go in and add devices and download profiles for them to add app IDs, which I said is what you need to do to create a new application. You're going to create a new app ID. I'll show you real quick what that shows. Like I said, you need a description, and this is just going to be a common name that I use for knowing what this application is within my own provisioning portal. A bundle seed ID. I'm not an expert on what that means, so recently I've just been using the team ID. And then the bundle identifier, which is that reverse domain style where it's com.domainname.appname. So once you do all that and you add that in, it's going to create an app ID for you so that you can actually, you're going to need that for both Xcode and you're going to need that for when you're setting up an iTunes Connect, which is going to be our next step. And then the provisioning profiles, you can see here we've got development, distribution. With development, you can see that you need to create a development profile for your app on a particular device or a list of devices. So it knows that when you go to compile this project that we have here that we can run in the simulator just fine, if I went to try to run it on a device, it would not let me because the code signing would be all torqued up. So we have to actually tell the provisioning profile that we've got an app that we want to add to X amount of devices and we want to test on it, and then we're going to set that up before we do our compile to a device. And then the distribution is going to be the profile that we use before we actually send this out to the App Store.
Hey, Chris.
Yep.
This is Sean again. When you're developing an app, okay, and you're developing it for someone else, for them to be able to have it under their distribution provisioning profile, do they have to pay the $100 a year for that?
Absolutely, yes. That's the way I do it. I know there's many ways to do it, and that's a debate for another time. But the way that I do it is she pays her $99, or each of my developers, each of my clients pay their $99. I am the developer. They are the publisher. I get it all working. I submit it under their name. They get paid for it. They handle all the support. I would not want to have to be in a situation where I'm getting sales reports on 5 different clients and paying them each. I let them pay their $99 and get their money. They know, all of my clients know that up front, that they're going to be making that investment.
Okay, but if a client had a free just business marketing app and they wanted to save costs, I could put that under my profile though, right?
You could, but you run the risk, and this is just what I've read, you run the risk of Apple at some point seeing that you've got a wide variety of apps in your profile, and if one is, let's say, about dentistry, and one is about horse racing, and one is about video games, they might at some point question you and say these all look like they're pointing to different people's websites, and it doesn't look like it's all from you. I've heard of them actually rejecting for that reason.
Okay. Thanks.
But a 1 or 2 off, you might get away with it. All right. So the iOS provisioning portal, I can't get deep into that, but that's basically the steps that you need to make to set up the app ID, which we'll need for both for Apple system, for iTunes Connect, and for Xcode. Set up our device and our provisioning profiles, which when we download those, we drag them into Xcode. Mine are already all built in there. But when you go through the provisioning profile, As confusing as a task it might be, their little step-through process actually works really well, and after you do it once, it just becomes easier and easier, and it tells you step by step how to set it up, how to drag it into Xcode, and after you spend the first time you do it will probably be a week-long process of pulling out your hair, but after that it should be easy. So next thing we're going to do is add our app to iTunes Connect. For this we need that bundle ID, so that's why we set that up first. If you try to add a new app into iTunes Connect, it's going to ask you what bundle ID to use, and it's going to pull up a list of your available bundle IDs that have not been used in other projects yet. So it's going to give you an empty list if you haven't created that yet, but it gives you a little link right underneath that that says, hey, if you don't have one, do you want to set one up, and it brings you into the provisioning portal. So you're going to need that. You're going to need all the basic information, language, the app name, the SKU number, the bundle ID, which we set up already. So this is all stuff that you come up with, the name of the app that's going to actually be in the App Store. A SKU number is your own, for your own housekeeping purposes, and the language and the bundle ID. Also, before you can save and get that thing to save in iTunes Connect, you're going to need to type in your description, or at least give it something as a placeholder, like Keith said. You're going to need your keywords, which is less than 100 bytes. Doesn't give you a whole lot of room, but you've got 4,000 characters to try to get some keywords into the description also. At this point, you're going to need a large app icon, 1024 by 1024 with 72 DPI. So that's why I always create that first, and I use that to scale it down throughout the rest of the requirements. And then you're going to need at least an iPhone screenshot to start with before you can actually hit save. So you want to kind of get, even if you're not going to put this thing into the store right away, it is a valid thing to go ahead and set it all up in iTunes Connect. And one reason is this right here, this app name has to be unique for their whole system. So if you had the perfect name for your app and you typed it in and it says it's not available, that's going to be a bummer. You're going to have to augment it some way. So I always try to, as soon as I come up with a perfect name, set it up in there, get this bare minimum stuff in there, even if I'm dragging in old stuff, just so I can hit the save button and it doesn't give me any errors. That way at least it saves the app name, and if somebody comes in afterwards and they're trying to make a quick buck off of a nifty name, then I've already got that name reserved. All right, so iTunes Connect, we're going to go into that website. I just want to see what else we got here. So we're going to go to the device next. So let me look at the iTunes Connect website real quick. And if they give you a simple way of getting back there, I never find it. So I always have to kind of drill back and then drill through again. Maybe I should just set up shortcuts. So over here under the development program, iTunes Connect, and this is going to be where you set up your apps, and you can see your sales reports, which are really crappy compared to other sales reports you can get, and then different things. When you do get to this point, you're going to have to acknowledge about 500 different usage, different, what's the word I'm looking for? Agreements, different user agreements for, depending on if you're making paid or free apps and stuff like that. So inside your manage apps, this is where you would go here. This would all be blank at your point. Oh, you guys are seeing a sneak preview of a up-and-coming app here. And you go to add a new app. These are the 4 things I said you needed: the language, the app name, a SKU number, and then a bundle ID. And if I had not set up that already, it wouldn't be in this list. So that's why you have to always register that first. Now I'm not going to go through these steps, but I can show you once I did all that and it was happy with the bundle ID, then we would come back to this screen and you would have a new icon. So I'm going to go into one of my existing apps here so you can see the rest of the details that you're going to have to add into it. You're going to add a description, some screenshots, support URL. It's going to tell you what's needed and what's not needed. So you want to at least get all the bare minimum stuff in there. so that you can get to the point of hitting save, and then that's that. You're going to have, yeah, they got new requirements now that I haven't complied with yet, but you're going to get the thing set up, and you need this set up in here so that we can actually get, at some point, this thing into the market to sell. So let's get through, in the next 10 minutes, we're going to get through the last couple steps.
Hey, Chris,
so we've got the app set up. Yes.
From the group, one question was, how long can you keep that unique app name in iTunes Connect, even if you're not using it?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've never had one disappear. So as long, I would guess, this is my guess, as long as you are paying $99 a year, they're not going to get rid of something for you. That's my guess.
Okay.
If you do let that $99 per year lapse, then you're going to lose control of all of your apps, and that's not a good thing.
Well, Keith just responded as I asked you the question. He believes it's 120 days, and then you lose it forever and cannot use it again.
Okay. I'm sure that's in one of those million documents that Apple supplies that I have not read.
I'm sure it is too. I wouldn't know either.
But I agree with everything that they've said to me. All right, so the last thing we're going to do here are the last couple steps: testing on a device and then submitting it to the store. So testing on the device, the requirements for that, again, we need to be a paying developer so that we can get those certificates downloaded. We need to connect a device via USB, just regular sync cable. The device has to already be in our provisioning portal, which we did in the previous steps. We're going to have to select our developer profile in the build settings. Let me show you where that is, or else you're going to get this code signing identity error. And hopefully this one step here saves a lot of people asking that question in the forums. Anytime you get a code signing error, it's usually because you've either got no profile selected in your build settings or you've got the wrong. And what I mean by the wrong profile setting is if you are going to a device, then you need to have a developer profile. If you are building an archive for distribution, then you need to have a distribution profile. You can't get those mixed up or else it will not work. You'll get a code sign error. Select your device in the scheme and then click Run. So I'm going to see if my device will even show up. I'm plugging one in. I thought I was plugging one in. It's the new cable. It doesn't like it. Okay, well, I'm going to skip that because it's not going in. That's what you get when you buy a non-Apple connector. So let's look at Xcode and look at those different things that I was talking about. To get to those build settings, these code signing identities for both the project and the target both default to do not code sign. And they're going to stay like that, and that's going to work just perfectly for our simulator. But if we want to get to a device, then we're going to have to put in a developer code identity. Now, if you set it all up right in the provisioning profile and you drug those files over into Xcode and let them add into they all show up in your organizer, then you will get a list here when you click on this drop down, and you'll have a whole bunch of them if you do this a lot. I always grab the automatic, so let's pick an automatic developer. And I know that some of these matter, some of them don't, and someone can correct me, but I always just go ahead and do all of them because I never get an error when I do all of them. So it says that it matches my iPhone developer, Chris Robbins account, and I'm going to do that for all of these just because that's a habit of mine. And when you do this, if you get an error that says no profiles match, then you have to go back through that provisioning profile and try this out again. So that's step one, getting those profiles in there. Step two is selecting right here. If I had plugged in my device and my device was recognized as one of the devices in my profile, then it would come up here and give the name of my device, and that's what I would select. When you do that and you click Run, then instead of running on the simulator, it's going to package everything up. In this window, you'll see it package all up, copy it across the USB to your device, and then a couple seconds later, you'll have a device running your app. At that point, it's on there, and you can test it all out with your true device, and that's always a needed thing to do before you actually submit it. So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to fast forward past that. We got it on the device. Last steps here to get it into the App Store. When we go into iTunes Connect, after we hit save on all the information about the description and stuff, that just kind of puts it in there, and it says, okay, I've made a device, or I've made an app, and it's all set up. But there's one more button to hit where it says ready to upload. If you try to compile and submit from Xcode to iTunes Connect, it'll come back and it'll say fail because you have not set up this ready to upload. Even after I've done this 100 times, it still bites me every now and then. I have to log in and click that one button, and then it's all good to go. So that's set up in iTunes Connect. This step right here is very important. That's why I put 3 whole exclamation points on it. Copy the latest configuration from your control panel into Xcode Buzztouch config. So let's look at that real quick. When I look at my config, my BT config text, this is what my BT config text was when I downloaded the app. This does not necessarily match, in this case it does, but this would not necessarily match what I have in my control panel. So one step that you want to do, and I'll tell you why after I do it, is go to your configuration data, and now assuming that we've made our 500-page long app, all those pages would be here. I'm just going to select all, copy, bring it back over into Xcode, select all, and paste. And like I said, we haven't changed anything, but this would now have all that data in there. What this is going to do is, when I compile this up and submit it to Apple, it's going to have the most latest config text, assuming that I have not, after I submitted, gone back in here and started making new screens or changing the layout, assuming that I'm done and happy with my project, and I submit it to Apple, then it's going to have the newest, most recent valid config text in there. And when someone downloads that app from the App Store, they won't immediately get the, hey, you need to refresh thing. They're not going to get an empty list menu with 2 items on it, like this shows, when I've really got a really nice looking pretty menu and everything. They're going to get the most current one, the finished product, downloaded first. Now, after that, if you do make changes, then yeah, they'll have the option of upload or refreshing, but at least the starting product that they get does not look like a turd. And that is a valid iOS term. All right. So last step, and then I'll entertain some questions here. In Xcode, you need to archive your app. This is the way I do it. There's many different ways to do it, but what I do is do an archive. To do an archive, you have to first attach a device. Second, choose the device in your scheme. And third, go back into where I had my developer profile set and all those screens and change it to my distribution profile, whether it's for me or for a client. Once I do that, then if you notice, right now it won't even give me, if you can see up here, it does. Sometimes it'll gray out the archive. Oh, here we go. Let's put this on here. If I'm testing in the simulator, it grays out the archive. I have to actually have a device hooked up with my distribution profiles, because it'll let you archive with a developer profile, but then when you go to submit it, it's going to give you an error. And if you've got a 500 meg app and you wait for that thing to upload, upload just for them to say, sorry, this isn't right, that's always a pain in the butt. So use your distribution profile, archive it. That's going to kind of package it all up. And then at that point in your organizer, which I'll go back to and show you an example, under my archives, you will see here's one that I did, a version 1.0, and you can hit validate, and it's going to kind of look at that package to make sure that this identifier right here matches what you set up in iTunes Connect. And then when it says that, okay, it's validated, then you can actually hit submit. And as long as you've set that thing as ready for, or waiting for a binary upload, ready for upload, then it will do a validate again. That's why I say you can either do a validate and submit, or just a submit. it will validate it again, upload it, and then you will get that email that you're always waiting for that says your new app is waiting for them to check out. So that gets us all the way to submitting an app into the App Store and gets us to that 2-week waiting period these days of biting your teeth, waiting to see if your app's going to get accepted or not. How'd we do? I got 1 minute left on my clock.
Impressive.
Oh, you're doing fine, Chris. In fact, we could run over a minute or two if we have people with questions. And I know Keith is out there and his mic is open and he's ready to contribute something here.
All right, I got all the time that you guys got, so ask anything you want.
Chris, that was very briefly, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for that walkthrough. Thoroughly educational and very well done. On the 120-day expiry period, Apple put that in place, I believe, to stop like kind of domain squatters, as we used to call them back in the day.
Okay.
But being a Scotsman, there's always a cheat. You can always you can always cheat the system. So all you have to do, and I've done it several times, is you can upload a binary and then immediately reject that binary, and that holds the name to you for as long as you want. So that 120 days is a steadfast criteria from Apple, but providing you upload a binary and then reject it, you get to keep that app name, which, like you said, is quite important if somebody else steals that app name. So upload a binary, reject it straight away, and that app name is yours for as long as you live.
Good. That's a good tip. All right. Any other questions?
I don't see anybody else with their hand up. Oh, I'm sorry. Susan's got her hand up. Susan, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay. One thing I had just the first book I read that got my first app to the App Store, and believe me, it used to be even worse than it is now to get to the App Store. But that book said when you're going to submit to the App Store for the first time, allow a whole day, because you got to make your screenshots and you're gonna have problems. And so it's just there's 1,000 things that can go wrong, and they will go wrong. And even now, it takes me several hours just to get something to the App Store at the final stages of getting all the images done, and some kind of provisioning problem is going to happen. It happens every time for me. So I don't know, just something to think about adding to this presentation is just really allow a day the first time you do it.
Yes, that's a fact. I've done it many times, and again, for just a little advice on the business side of things, I've got a separate line item in my invoice for every client that says app submission, and I bill them a set price for that because I know how long it's going to take. Even though I've done it a million times, it still takes me hours and hours and hours to get the thing just all right. So if you're doing this for other people, please take my advice and get paid for that time.
Yeah.
Don't consider that part of the process. That is time that you need, and it's frustrating time if you run into any hiccups along the way.
Well, it's a lot better if you plan for it taking a whole day. It's not so painful. Yeah, but if you thought, oh, well, it's a few steps to go through, but it's not. It never is. There's always some problem. It's always different too, every time.
I'll help you laugh a little bit. Back in the early days of, like, literally right when the App Store started, I was sitting through that painful day that Susan's describing where, you think that it's all ready to go and you think this giant company, Apple, would have it all perfect, but, it never seems to go that way. So several hours into it, I literally was thinking, I'm just going to put this on a thumb drive and drive to Cupertino, walk on the app, and hand them the damn thing. They're right up the road. And in my part of the world, one infinite loop, Cupertino, California, is kind of it's kind of the Mecca. And I was seriously thinking to myself, I wonder if the receptionist would know what to do with this, because their tech guys have no idea.
Uh-huh.
But anyway.
Every time,
It's better now than it used to be. I'm telling you now, it's
Oh,
much better
yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah.
It's much better.
every time I have to explain that line item to a client or a potential client, I offer them there is another way. I can remove that line item and give you a thumb drive with your app on it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they look at me like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? And
Right.
then they get the checkbook out.
It's your account.
Totally.
You could do
In
it.
fact, I think it was Sean earlier that was asking about the idea of submitting under his account. I can't remember if that was Sean or if that
Yes, it was. You're correct.
Yeah.
Right.
What most people do in that case, Sean, if you're still with us, is help the customer set that iTunes account out. Help the customer set that iTunes account up. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're sitting staring over your shoulder or whatever, but if you put an item on your invoice and you just explain to them that that's part of the process, there's nothing wrong with, if Apple wants $100, I mean, there's nothing wrong with charging a couple of $100 for that service because it's a professional service. It's going to take you the hour or whatever. You just do it for them. And typically that involves getting their credit card and their email address and all that kind of stuff. But abstracting them from that idea and from that work is usually a really good approach. And like Chris said, when you're done, you don't have, you're certainly in most cases you're logging in on their behalf and checking statistics and doing updates and all that kind of stuff. And they understand that. But you're not responsible for that. And a lot of people have heard me say this before. If something should happen to you, or your ability to maintain all of these different apps in your control panel down the road, and that could mean a number of different things, your customers are now kind of out on an island without you, right? And so it's generally always best to not only just follow the guidelines that Apple wants, which is set them up an account, but just do it for them. And then I usually keep a little package of, for each, a little folder on my computer for each client, and of course it's got the Apple credentials and a little file, and I'm always prepared kind of at any moment to give that client everything that I consider a deliverable, and that might mean details about their Apple account, things like that, because they will forget. They don't want to worry about it.
Good idea.
Okay.
All right, Warren, any other questions?
I don't see any other questions, either on the question panel or anyone with their hand up. So at this time, I think it'd be an appropriate time to wrap up your part of the presentation, Chris. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of everybody that attended. It was a great presentation, and the intended audience not only was tonight, but for many newbies to come through to the Buzztouch world, and I think they'll get quite a bit out of it. David, do you have any final thoughts you want to wrap up with?
No, I share yours with, thanking Chris for taking the time to put this together. It's not easy to put these presentations together and going through the trouble to make the PowerPoint and everything. So tons of thanks for that. I would ask the audience to, if you're on Twitter, jump on Twitter and maybe follow Chris Robbins. I think he's at iDevDepot. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, Chris.
I'm not a
podcast. And, we'll see you around. And hopefully we'll get this recording in front of a lot of people to come, and it'll help us all in the forums with those basics. Maybe we'll put it in one of the learning paths or something.
I think that'd be a great idea. And David, just a reminder to you that we've got you signed up for 2 presentations next week. So
cool.
Anybody in the audience wants to jump on to those webinars next week on Tuesday, our daytime 1-hour presentation is about localization of your app. And David, you could probably explain that a little better than I can.
Sure. Localization just refers to the idea that you're going to have customers and end users in different locales. Generally, that means different countries speaking different languages, and there's a lot of different strategies that you can take to try to manage your way around that. One of the strategies, of course, is multiple versions of your app, but another one of the strategies might be one app with multiple language files. So we'll talk about some of the ways to accomplish that concept on Tuesday.
Okay, and then on our Wednesday evening presentation, the 90-minute one, it'll kind of go back to one that we did earlier where we built a plugin. Towards the end, we got to delve into the control panel a little bit. So we're going to spend 90 minutes next Wednesday night talking in more technical terms about how the control panel works, how it links with your app, how to make it do what you want it to do. So David, you're on the spot for that one as well.
Yeah, that'll be a good one, and that's I love web programming more than anything. I mean, in Java and Objective-C and all this other stuff is fun, but if I could do one thing all day, it'd be helping people understand how the web works, and that should be an interesting and kind of eye opener, I think, for a lot of people who maybe are intimidated by the control panel and how it all is kind of put together and what it does. I think that a lot of people will get a lot deeper of an understanding, even if you don't consider yourself a webmaster or a PHP programmer or whatever. Hopefully we'll have a better way to explain it so that it'll make a little bit more sense to you.
All right, Chris, any final thoughts?
I just appreciate everybody coming. This was fun for me. It's a lot of information that I've compiled over the last couple of years. Like I said, it might not be the way that everybody else does it, but it's the way that I do it, and it works. And I tried to keep everything to the point that it was, kind of the common way of doing things. And as always, if you have any questions or any further questions about this, feel free to contact me in the forums.
All right.
Cool. Well done. Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.